I take my Unitarian Universalist faith seriously because I identify with the UU principles, notably the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Buff provides the opportunity to act on those principles and to be in a community of those who share those principles. When I began teaching at Lake Michigan College, Dorothy and I joined and were active in Fair Plain Presbyterian Church, where I eventually became clerk of session. Our daughter at Cornell had told us she was gay, and we had concluded that our son, who had attempted to end his life and left himself in a permanent vegetative state, was gay. We did not reveal the sexual orientation of either our daughter or son to anyone at the church. When the session considered a program to learn about GLBT people and issues, one session member said that if the church adopted the program, he would leave the church. My thought was that if the church did not adopt the program, I would leave the church. Later, when we were at Buff and our daughter attended, she made the point of saying during circle talk that we had come to Buff because of her. She would later transition to become our son. We learned of Buff from Amy Eklund, who was doing the Buff newsletter. Her husband taught with me at Lake Michigan College. Marv Fuller welcomed us the first time we attended. After attending Buff for a while, we wondered why we were not asked to consider membership. However, that happened and we became members on January 21st, 1986. Dorothy and I took opportunities to learn about Unitarian Universalism. In addition to UUA district meetings in Chicago, Dorothy and I attended the UUA General Assembly in Indianapolis, staying in a campground to save expense. What I remember most about the General Assembly was that it was an environment where our gay children would have been welcomed and where we were able to talk about them at Buff. My recollection is that Gloria was one that I talked to. At Buff, Unitarian Universalist ministers Viola Moore, Dr. Roger Bruin, and later Donald Wheat amplified our Unitarian Universalist education. Identifying with UU principles is one thing, acting on them is another. Buff gave Dorothy and me the opportunity to be active in social justice. We were active in the creation of a PFLAG chapter in 2001 and attended the monthly meetings in the decade that followed. The majority of those attending were members of the GLBT community, not parents and friends of lesbians and gays. That same year, with Gloria Weberg, Rosalind Reeder, Benton Harbor ministers, and others, I worked to secure the release of Maurice Carter, who was imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. We were aided by the Northwestern Innocence Project and the presence of Reuben Hurricane Carter. In 2004, with generous funding from the Arcus Foundation and in collaboration with local activists, the YWCA of Berrien County founded the YWCA Out and Affirmation Center. I was active in the Out and Affirmation Center. Dorothy was YWCA treasurer. Living the Unitarian Universalist principles was the path of our journey. Thank you.
I was largely unchurched by my atheist parents, and even as a young adult, didn't really understand God from Jesus or Baptist from Catholic. But in 1997, 35 years old, I walked into this building looking for community. I met some of the same buffers you see here today: Charles, Dorothy, Gloria, Gretchen. And I heard a sermon, and I immediately felt connected. After experimenting with Catholicism, briefly a little later, I began to better appreciate the openness and inclusivity of UU. Now, I'm a UU evangelist, sharing my dedication to UU with anyone who will listen. Buff is such a rich part of my life that I can barely have a conversation with anyone without mentioning Buff or UU. Like the author in our sermon today, I believe our world needs compassionate and like the author in our sermon today, I believe our world needs the compassionate and saving vision of Unitarian Universalism, and that millions of people from different cultures and backgrounds need this transforming faith. To that end, I support our Unitarian Universalist Association. I've been passionate about doing my part to make Buff a welcoming place for anyone who wants to be here, for anyone who feels called to this space. Though, unfortunately, occasionally I have stumbled in that regard. When I was still somewhat new to Buff, a friend asked me if our minister, then the Reverend Dr. Roger Bruin, believed in God. I said I didn't know, and my friend was incredulous. How can you not know whether or not your minister believes in God? At the time, I shrugged it off, but today, I would say being a Unitarian Universalist isn't about believing in God or any specific higher power. It's about being a good person and doing good work while treading lightly on our planet. The sermon of today's Reader's Theater was written by UU minister Reverend Scott Alexander, who coincidentally, following Charles's message, was the author of the Welcoming Congregation Handbook that Buff and many other UU congregations use to become a certified welcoming congregation to all people. I'll be reading the main body of Reverend Alexander's message, and Jim, Beth, and Gretchen will fill in some additional voices. Reverend Alexander currently serves as a minister at the River Road Unitarian Church in Bethesda, Maryland. So, becoming Reverend Alexander. At one point in her novel, Fly Away Home, American writer Marge Piercy has a mother say, "The girls had been raised Unitarian Universalist. It seemed a nice compromise between having no religion at all and having to lie about what we believed. You know, enough religion to be respectable, but not enough to get in the way." As a proud Unitarian Universalist and minister, I strive to be serious about my religious life. So I have to say, hearing enough religion to be respectable, but not enough to get in the way, really hurts. But this is precisely what many people from other faith groups think of UUs. Remember the old jokes? Question, what is Unitarian Universalism?
Well, it's a way station between Methodism and the golf course.
Question, what do you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness with a Unitarian Universalist?
Well, that one's easy. It's someone who knocks on your door for no particular reason.
Yeah, I used to laugh at jokes about how laid back and lax we Unitarian Universalists are about our religion, but I'm not laughing anymore. I've stopped laughing because I realize how terribly important it is for me to take my religious life seriously. As I approach midlife and my 50th birthday, I find myself increasingly compelled by life's vast spiritual questions and pressing ethical demands. I've stopped laughing because I believe with all of my heart and soul this troubled world desperately needs the compassionate and saving vision of Unitarian Universalism. I believe people, millions of people from different cultures and backgrounds, need this transforming faith. I've stopped laughing because we can no longer allow ourselves to be marginalized, ridiculed, or dismissed. Unitarian Universalism will never realize its great potential and mission unless we are, in both reputation and reality, serious religious people. So let's explore what it means to get serious about your Unitarian Universalism. First, we do need to acknowledge that we UUs are largely responsible for our own reputation as a lightweight and soft religion. My colleague Bill Miller puts it bluntly.
For too long, we have not taken ourselves seriously. We have offered a haven for those on their way out of institutionalized religion. We have demanded little and received the same. Too many of us have actually espoused the notion that one can believe anything and still be a Unitarian Universalist. We have resisted the structures imposed by form and structure and embraced a laissez-faire spirituality that has commanded the respect of nearly no one.
Stephen Carter, in The Culture of Disbelief, asserts that our society as a whole encourages individuals to not take their religion seriously.
In contemporary American culture, religions are more and more treated as just passing beliefs, almost as fads, rather than as the fundament upon which the devout build their lives. What this culture says is if religions become inconvenient, give them up. If you can't remarry because you have the wrong religious belief, well, hey, believe something else. If you must go to work on the Sabbath, it's no big deal, it's just a day off. Pick a different one. If you can't have a blood transfusion because you think God forbids it, no problem, get a new God. And through all of this trivializing rhetoric runs a subtle but unmistakable message. Pray if you like, worship if you must, but whatever you do, do not on any account take your religion seriously. This attitude exerts pressure to treat religion as a hobby.
And in every congregation I have served, there have been people for whom Unitarian Universalism seemed little more than a casual convenience, an occasional hobby. A parishioner in New Jersey told me that he thought our church was an interesting and entertaining place to be on Sunday mornings when I'm not away skiing. Our other ministers and denominational statistics have painted the same sad picture. Far too often, we have been a low participation, low expectation, and low commitment religion. Regrettably, many people see Unitarian Universalism as the religious path of least resistance. And as we try to rise to the demand for serious religion, we bump up against the casualness that has defined us in the past. I have tried to explain what a demanding, disquieting, lifelong journey it is to be seriously on the Unitarian Universalist path, but some folks just don't get it. They fixate on our freedom. At last, a church where I don't have to pretend to believe all that stuff I don't believe. And they miss altogether the challenge and tension written into that fourth principle. Ours is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. To be a UU is to spend a lifetime seeking reality and truth and to live in this world in an ethical and principled way. And there's nothing casual or easy about that. My colleague Charles Magistro speaks to this point.
I'm amused by the view that it's easy to be a Unitarian Universalist. It's as easy to be a UU as it is to search the murky waters of life without sure charts to guide us, or any guarantee that we will find a safe port in which to put down anchor. It's as easy to be a Unitarian Universalist as it is to overcome the natural fear of the unknown and venture forth with nothing to sustain us, save our zest for living and our hunger for new experience and new knowledge. Our way in religion is not the way of ease. We are called to be sailors. For many worlds exist waiting to be discovered, and not the least of them are within ourselves. It takes much persistence, courage, and curiosity to look into our own depths, to come to terms with the twin mysteries of being alive and having to die, to see ourselves in new and larger ways without being dishonest about our limitations. We have only begun to discover our potential.
We've only begun to discover our potential. So, first, we must acknowledge that we UUs are largely responsible for our reputation as lightweight and soft. Second, we must understand that Unitarian Universalism does not give you freedom from religion. It gives you freedom for religion. It is the great paradox of our faith. Being a UU does not give you freedom to believe anything you want. It gives you the freedom to search for and find those beliefs from which your heart and soul cannot escape. Being a UU means searching for your own defining religious principles and then allowing yourself to be absolutely captured by them. Actively practicing our free religion has an inescapable quality about it. The only choice involved is whether or not to take your emerging personal truths and principles seriously enough to actually live them on a daily basis. Once you find your moral and spiritual guideposts, which do evolve over the years, but once you find them, you have no choice but to follow the paths that your guideposts define. This faith tradition, which trusts the integrity and worth, which trusts the integrity and worth of each individual, sets you free, not so that you can casually dabble in religion, but so that you can become, as Stephen Carter puts it, intoxicated by an authentic personal faith you cannot help but to live, serve, and cherish. For some UUs, this means choosing a particular faith stance, such as living as a committed Christian or Buddhist, humanist, or neo-pagan. For others, finding an authentic religious path is more eclectic, more of an individual process, gradually evolving a personal set of our own authoritative beliefs and principles drawn from our UU sources. Our principles and values, articulated in the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. The hundreds of years of our liberal faith tradition, which our quilts represent so beautifully here, including the writings and deeds of our UU foreparents. The traditions, scriptures, and ethics of other great faith traditions, and especially those of the Judeo-Christian tradition from which Unitarianism and Universalism both arose independently. Plus, the consensus of human history and law. And further, we take into consideration the moral sense and conscience of our own direct experience in the world. Whew, that's a lot to consider. Many UUs come out of conservative faith traditions, hurt and angry about the spiritual damage they suffered in the religion of their childhoods. After a period of liberation from what I do not believe, many move toward new, authentic, life-giving beliefs. Although a few UUs get stuck spiritually in a negative rebellion from religious past, most, sooner or later, begin using the freedom that comes with being a UU and get serious about discovering what they really do believe. Finding the ethical and moral principles that do inform their living, and engage in spiritual practices that feed their souls and energize them for careful, responsible living. The UU minister Jim Brewer. The UU minister Jim Brewer further reminds us this.
Freedom demands responsibility to others in life. It is not it is not enough to be merely It is not enough to be merely disciples of freedom. We must also be disciples of intelligence, sensitivity, understanding, and love. It is not enough to be free from intolerable constraints, but to be free for what is good and true and beautiful. May we realize that freedom is not an end to our religion, but in reality, only its beginning.
So we must acknowledge responsibility for our reputation as a soft religion and embrace our freedom for religion. And thirdly, being a UU is about much more than the opinions and beliefs you hold. As we've heard from so many today, being a UU is about the way you live every day. Our tradition has always affirmed that true religion is about deeds, not creeds. Don't tell me what you believe. Show me how you live. If being a Unitarian Universalist were against the law, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Taking your Unitarian Universalism seriously means that your beliefs, principles, and values should be visibly present in your life. People around you should be able to see your religion in big and little ways, in what you say and do in relationships, in how you make decisions and solve problems, in the institutions and causes to which you give your time and money, in how you care for and serve other living things, most especially, of course, people. As my colleague Robert Swain says,
faith is not enough, nor belief. Living what you believe is the principle of honesty put into practice. Unitarians and Universalists over the centuries thus have been active, out of all proportion to our numbers, in seeking justice, struggling against our oppression, and making this a better world to live in.
So we're in the home stretch, getting serious about UU. The first dimension of getting serious about your religious life is talking the talk. Taking the trouble, when appropriate and respectful, to share with others, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, what you religiously believe and why you believe it. But true religion, transforming, saving, compassionate religion, is then about walking the walk, rolling up your sleeves and genuinely living a theology of dirty hands, standing up for principles, living your values, and serving others. That religion, unlike the lackluster UUism Marge Piercy's character described earlier, very much gets in the way of daily life. It very much got in the way of Renee Good's daily life. Not sure, like Barry, she was a UU, but it certainly applies there. Because it is not convenient to live by one's most dearly held principles. There are many costs and sacrifices that are required. For in this broken world of ours, it is hard to serve justice, difficult to work for peace and equality, and demanding to live compassionately. We are called by the history, spirit, and principles of our UU faith to grow bigger, more inclusive hearts. Being a UU means lending yourself and your soul daily to the building of a gentler, more humane world. Not so much in grand and glorious, heroic feats like those accomplished by great human saints, but in little everyday ways that have the power to transform our world, one caring, responsible deed at a time. Now, I don't want you to feel intimidated, however. Being serious about your Unitarian Universalism simply means that you strive to make a positive, principled difference right where you live, in your little cluttered corner of life, in all the everyday ways that count. UU has amazing saints like Clara Barton, who founded the Red Cross during the Civil War, Theodore Parker, who helped protect runaway slaves, or James Reeb, who died in the streets of Selma. But being a UU is not about rising to the level of noble sainthood. It's about being a caring, authentic person, living the beliefs and values that grow in your life center, talking the talk and walking the walk. Amen. Blessed be.